Welcome to the Agronomy and Farm Management Podcast. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Elizabeth. Thanks for joining us today.
We're continuing our harvest safety discussion this week by focusing on roadway safety. Always comes up in a few discussions, it seems like, on social media posts or just talking with farmers and those in the ag industry as tractors become a more common sight on the roadway. And we do our best to educate the general public. We do a lot of meetings and social media posts, things like that, to try to get the word out. But they're a harder audience to reach. So it's really important, I think, for farmers that we do the best we can to identify and protect ourselves. And through that, we have Dr. Dee Jepson and Lisa Pfeiffer here with us again this week from the Ag Safety team to give us some tips that we can use to address and try to mitigate some of the issues that we have on the roadway. So welcome. Why don't you introduce yourselves again, just in case we have some new listeners. Go ahead, Dee.
Hi, thanks for having us. Roadway safety, that is a very important topic, as you just mentioned. I'm Dee Jepson, and I am the State Agriculture State Safety and Health Leader and work with those Ohio Department of Public Safety. They always contact us, say, how can we get the word out for people that are interacting with ag equipment? So thanks for focusing on this as the time is about ready to change, Amanda. And Lisa's with us today too.
I'm Lisa Pfeiffer, and I work with Ag Safety and Health Program under Dee, and I do a lot of our outreach education across the state and working with farmers in multiple capacities to stay safe.
Dee, you mentioned a moment ago the time change. So that really just ups the hazards that we're seeing on the road as, it's darker now in the morning and it gets darker earlier in the evenings. So when we're thinking about moving equipment and things like that, that risk can be higher. Lisa, to start off with, would you like to give us an overview about what some of the incidents that we have and what the highest risks are when it comes to farm safety here on the road?
Yeah, our office is tasked with keeping track of injury and fatality data in the state. And if we look specifically and turn our view to what has happened kind of over the course of the past year in the state of Ohio, we notice at harvest season a couple incidents back in October last year during harvest, and we've already seen one this year with tractors. And so tractors being on the roadway is a large concern. We also look at ATV use on roadways in particular as being problematic too. Sometimes people don't understand how to use those on a roadway. On a paved road, it's different than other areas of the farm. So we certainly want to take a look at both of those types of equipment, any type of equipment on the road. But we have seen just 2.5 weeks ago, we had an incident with a tractor on the roadway and was preparing to make a left-hand turn, and a motorcycle went to pass the tractor at the same time, and the motorcycle operator lost their life in that incident. So just making sure that we're taking all the precautions that we can and being aware that this is a time for a higher increase of incidents.
So there's a few different vehicles that we use around the farm equipment being the obvious one, but also ATVs.
One of the implements that we use on the farm frequently are the ATVs or UTVs. They have increased in size where you might be able to have multiple passenger, but those vehicles are intended for non-paved surfaces, gravel surfaces or dirt. So we just need to be careful and recognize that if we have to use it as a transport vehicle to take somebody to the field or to take supplies or something like that, that when we are moving out onto the roadway, that the better place for us to be is in the berm of the road. If it's extremely sloped, then you want to drive on the roadway itself, but traveling at great rates of speed will just increase your risk that you don't want to be doing that. And so, when we look at the Department of Safety statistics on ATVs, it's not really clear whether those are tied to a farm because that's not how they do their data. But what we do see is that when we put these vehicles on a roadway, that we are having incidents, and it's causing fatality. So we just want to keep that in our minds, making sure that you wear the appropriate safety equipment. If you're in a UTV, that you're buckling your seatbelt. If you're on an ATV and you're going to be on a roadway, that you put a helmet on your head. All of those things can lessen our risk every time we get on those vehicles or in those vehicles.
Those are really good points, Lisa. That's one of the things I think when we started discussing working on this podcast, I didn't even think about ATVs or UTVs because it's not something that is at the forefront of our minds always when we think about, some of the bigger safety questions. So that's a great reminder for everyone.
Well, I like that discussion too, Lisa, because some of our older ATVs may not have lights. And so then what do you do in that situation? And certainly you would not be out after dark on those vehicles that have no lights. That's illegal to be on the roadway with that. So we got to think about our equipment and maintaining the equipment. Like if one of the taillights is broken out, or if it has no headlight, then you can't operate it after hours on a public roadway. That's just in the Ohio Revised Code that way.
So switching over to some of the more traditional things that we think about, like tractors and moving our combines on the roadway this time of year, what safety considerations should we think about first?
I'll keep on with the Ohio Revised Code and what's in there as far as what our lighting requirements are is from sunset to sunrise is what they are suggesting, that you have to have working lights. That's 2 red tail lights to the rear and headlights to the front. The amber flashing lights are common on a lot of our pieces of equipment. And so is extremity lighting. If you're operating dual wheeled tractors, the tires are more than singles. You have either doubles or triples, then you need to mark that extremity. If you're moving wider pieces of equipment, having the amber flashers on that, marking the width of that equipment. I'm thinking of a header on a combine header. If you're keeping it intact as you're coming down the road, or if you take it off and put it on a trailer is always recommended, depending on the kind of roads that you're moving that equipment on. And then always the beloved SMV emblem that was created right here at Ohio State, now just as famous as those McDonald arches. People recognize that SMV as their early signal that they're approaching a slow-moving vehicle. And so having that intact and dusted off so that when you leave the field, it's doing its job. That red retro reflective border is what's seen at nighttime, and the orange fluorescent center is what's reflective by day.
A point there to make sure that, that at the back of the vehicle, whatever that might be, or trailer, and also that it's cleaned off and visible when you leave the field, right?
Yes, make sure that SMV and your lights are on the most rear implement that you're towing. If you're pulling wagons out of the field, it has to, those wagons need to have lights on them as well. If you're operating at night, now if you're operating during the day, reflectors are a good idea. But at night, it is after sunset, the lights are required, that you have 2 red tail lights and that SMV emblem. During the day, the SMV is really all that's required by Ohio Revised Code, is that you have a good visible SMV emblem. And as you just said, dusting it off, you wipe off your windshield as you're leaving the field and moving. Go ahead and dust off your SMV while you're out there.
And something else I think that farmers are taking advantage of is adding lighting or even rear cameras, which can really help them see going down the road if someone's coming up when they're getting ready to make a left-hand turn. So there's a lot of that technology that's really affordable now that can be added to equipment too.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. We are sharing the roads with a lot of people that may not understand agriculture equipment, and taking that left-hand turn is so dangerous on behalf of the farmer to put themselves at risk by turning left. And so having the extra cameras and making sure that they're signaling the best they can, or hugging the road the center line the best they can before making that left-hand turn. Um, and at the same time, I'm an advocate for the farmers because they have every right to be on that road as well. It's called sharing the roadways, and so how do we share with our neighbors and make sure that it's safe? But I always tell farmers, you do not have to pull over. It's a courtesy that if you'd like to choose to pull over and let cars pass, but it's some state highway patrols will say stay in your lane and continue your course because that's where you are the safest. If you pull off to motion people by, then you've just accepted responsibility that you're allowing other cars to pass. You're telling another car that it's okay to pass, and maybe it wasn't, or they could, have an injury and sue the farmer because they said, well, they said it was okay to do that. So a lot of times, the farmers will, they'll want to wave a person by, or it's just best not to do that, is for their own legal sake. Now, if you want to include escort vehicles, then that would be another friendly way to communicate to those motorists that are out there on the roadway with you. On our farm, we've started putting an escort vehicle in the front of our convoy so that they can be an early detection of that there's farm machinery coming down the road, and they'll see the flashers. Because a lot of times our crashes on Ohio roads are front crashes, meaning they did not see the width of a piece of equipment coming at them. They were just, driving, maybe not paying attention. And so we do have collisions from the front that are fairly popular in our database. The rearward crashes, most of the time people can see a tractor coming, whether they have enough time to slow down, the reaction time to slow down. But the front, just kind of thinking about how do you warn those oncoming traffic to your wider equipment.
Yeah, that's a great point to use, that escort vehicle, because it really is, if you're wider than the road or wider than the double yellow and you're allowed to be doing that, but will people see that or not? That's a big concern. And through some of my pesticide trainings, we talked about roadway safety over the past few years, and I'd ask farmers to share, what time of day they were moving or whether they move in a convoy or separate. And I think there's some advantages and disadvantages to each of those. And of course, moving time of day, that's knowing your area, your neighborhood. Sunday mornings seem to be a popular time, but also not moving at 3 p.m. on a school day afternoon, And then thinking about the convoy situation, a lot of farmers, I think, like to do that because of visibility, but they also recognize it can be really frustrating for people following them because it makes it really hard to pass. So in some conditions, it may be safer to spread those vehicles out so people have the opportunity to pass and aren't taking undue risk because they're in a hurry. I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Most farmers know their communities that they're driving through and what the driving pattern is. Those mailboxes that are so close to the road and that they have to swerve around. And so you take all those into consideration when you're trying to decide what's the best time of day that you're going to be, crossing those, the yellow line, or slowing people down. I think you hit it on the head, Amanda, is that knowing your community and escort vehicles, either in front of you to alert or behind you to just slow some groups down. I know the escort vehicles can sometimes even help whenever you're trying to make that left-hand turn, or that rear vehicle knows to put on their turn signal so that you're kind of alerting the whole group of cars behind you that we will eventually be turning left into this next upcoming driveway, and helping them not get impatient back there.
So yes, I would remind folks that left-hand turn is one of the most dangerous maneuvers with farm machinery, because oftentimes if your equipment is large, you're going to have to veer to the right first before trying to make that left-hand turn, and that can confuse the person behind you. So I would also remind farmers that you should also be using your hand signals in addition to your lighted signals when you go to make those turns, and if at all possible, trying to make eye contact before you take that left-hand turn if you can. I know that many times you've got such large equipment that it's not possible, but when it is possible, that will help.
Well, Dee and Lisa, once again, it was great to have you guys. You've offered some great information for us to keep in mind as we hopefully wrap up harvest here over the next few weeks. Again, can you remind our listeners where they can go to find more information from the Ag Safety team?
Sure, you can visit our website. It's Ag Safety, that's agsafety.osu.edu. And there we have some graphics on lighting and marking. We can explain the speed identification symbol and the extremity lighting if you'd like to review any of that today.
That's excellent stuff. Thank you guys so much. And then just a quick request for our listeners. We'd like to get some feedback from all of you about how we're doing, how you enjoy the podcast, whether the topics we're offering are relevant, and then if you have any topics you would like to hear us cover. You can find the link to this survey in the notes for this show, and then also keep an eye out on social media for that link as well. Thanks for listening today, and stay safe for the rest of the harvest.
Thanks for listening to the Agronomy and Farm Management Podcast. Join us again in 2 weeks for our next episode.